3:17 a.m. Austin, Texas, a strip mall office suite on East Riverside Drive. 12 FBI Cyber Division agents stacked against the front entrance. 4 Secret Service agents covered the rear loading dock. Inside, 7 monitors displayed active deepfake rendering software processing a new victim's face. The target had been under surveillance for 41 days. The operation behind that door had extorted $23 million from 1,400 Americans across 31 states, and it was only 18% complete. The breach order came at 3:18 a.m. flashbangs first, then the RAM. This is the story of Project Mirror. Not the government's name for it, the criminals' name for their own operation. It started with a resignation letter. October 2025, a 31-year-old AI researcher named Kevin Dahl walked out of a machine learning startup in Palo Alto. He'd spent 3 years developing facial recognition and face-swapping algorithms for the entertainment industry. Digital de-aging, stunt double replacement, legitimate applications generating legitimate revenue. Dahl's departure wasn't unusual. Startups lose engineers constantly. What was unusual was the 6 terabytes of proprietary training data he copied to an external drive on his last day. Source code, model weights, training data sets containing hundreds of thousands of facial mapping coordinates. His colleague, Irene Molina, followed him out 2 weeks later. She took nothing physical. She didn't need to. She'd already memorized the architecture. By November 2025, Dahl and Molina had set up a limited liability company called Prism Pixel Productions in Austin, Texas. On paper, it was a video production company. It had a website, business cards, a Google listing showing 4-star reviews. The office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. Inside, they'd assembled a custom workstation array, 16 high-end GPUs running in parallel, capable of generating a photorealistic face-swapped video in under 4 minutes. Their software, which they internally called Mirage, could produce a convincing deepfake from as few as 3 publicly available photographs. 3 photos. That was the threshold. A LinkedIn headshot, a Facebook profile picture, a conference photo. That's all they needed to place someone's face onto fabricated compromising footage with a confidence score above 97%. The first victim was a school principal in suburban Dallas, a woman named Barbara Kinsey, 53 years old. She received an encrypted email on November 14, 2025, containing a 45-second video clip. The clip appeared to show her in a situation that never occurred. It was indistinguishable from reality. The email included instructions. Transfer $14,000 in Bitcoin to a specified wallet address within 72 hours. If the payment was received, the footage would be deleted. If not, the video would be sent to every parent in her school district, to the local news, and posted on 3 adult content aggregation sites. Kinsey paid. She told no one. The team grew. Dahl and Molina recruited 5 additional members over the following weeks. Marcus Fong, 28, a former cryptocurrency exchange compliance analyst who understood blockchain laundering infrastructure. Reese Calloway, 34, who managed the target selection database. Anna Petrov, 26, who handled victim communications and payment tracking. Diego Salazar, 30, who maintained the server infrastructure. And Tyler Newsom, 24, fresh out of college, who scraped social media for source photographs. 7 people, 3 locations, an assembly line. The Austin office handled deepfake production, a server farm in a converted agricultural barn outside Sparks, Nevada, 20 miles east of Reno, stored the fabricated content and the target database. A cryptocurrency laundering node operated from a coworking space in the Wynwood district of Miami, where Fong processed payments through a chain of mixer services and decentralized exchanges. Calloway's target selection was methodical, not random, not opportunistic, calculated. He built profiles using publicly available data: social media presence, professional role, estimated income, family status, public visibility in their community. Then he scored each potential victim on a scale he called the Compliance Probability Index. The higher the score, the more likely someone was to pay rather than go to the police. Corporate executives scored high. They had reputations to protect, income to spend, and a horror of public scandal. Local politicians scored high, teachers scored high, military officers scored extremely high. Career destruction from a leaked video, even a fabricated one, was nearly guaranteed. The average demand was $16,500, but the range varied. A small-town city council member might receive a demand for $8,000. Fortune 500 vice president might receive one for $45,000. The amounts were calibrated to feel painful but payable, right? Not so high that a victim would feel they had nothing to lose. The 72-hour deadline was critical to the model. Dahl had studied behavioral psychology research on decision-making under time pressure. 3 days was long enough for a victim to acquire Bitcoin. Many had never purchased cryptocurrency before, but short enough to prevent rational deliberation, legal consultation, or emotional recovery from the initial shock. The proof of concept clip sent with each demand was always 45 seconds, long enough to be devastating, short enough to imply there was more. In most cases, there was no more. The 45-second clip was the entire fabricated product. The threat of a longer video was a bluff, but the victims didn't know that. If you're watching this channel, you've seen operations that hid behind borders, shell companies, and encrypted networks. Hit the like button so more people can see how this one worked. Between November 2025 and January 2026, the operation scaled rapidly. Newsom's social media scraping operation collected photographs of potential targets at a rate of approximately 200 new profiles per week. Callaway processed them through the Compliance Probability Index. Dahl and Molina's rendering pipeline could produce 20 to 25 new deepfake clips per day. The payment rate stabilized at roughly 40%. 4 out of 10 victims paid. The other 6 either ignored the demand, contacted law enforcement, or attempted to negotiate. The operation's protocol for non-payers was simple: do nothing, move on. The cost of actually distributing fabricated content was higher than the cost of generating the next batch of victims. Follow-through on threats was rare and selective, used only to maintain credibility in cases where the operation suspected the victim was communicating with other victims. By late December 2025, the cumulative revenue exceeded $9 million. Fong's laundering chain processed payments through 7 separate cryptocurrency mixers, converting Bitcoin to Monero and back, then routing funds through decentralized exchange protocols before off-ramping to prepaid debit cards and shell company bank accounts in 3 countries. The database on the Nevada server farm contained 8,000 names. At the current extraction rate, the operation would have taken approximately 3.5 more years to exhaust its full target list. The first fracture appeared on December 3, 2025. A retired Army colonel in Virginia named Gregory Teague received the standard extortion email. 45-second clip, $22,000 demand, 72 hours. Teague did not pay. He did not panic. He drove to the FBI field office in Richmond the same morning and filed a report. He also brought something most victims didn't: a background in signals intelligence and a contact list that included 2 active-duty cyber warfare specialists at Fort Liberty. Teague analyzed the email headers himself before handing them over. He identified the use of a Proton mail relay, a VPN exit node in Romania, and a Bitcoin wallet address. None of this was sufficient to identify the sender, but it entered the system. At the FBI's Cyber Division in Washington, D.C., Teague's complaint joined a growing file. By December 2025, the Bureau had received 87 separate reports of deepfake extortion from individuals in 19 states. The pattern was unmistakable: same format, same 72-hour deadline, same Bitcoin payment structure, same quality of fabrication. Supervisory Special Agent Dana Whitfield assigned 4 analysts to cross-reference the reports. Within 2 weeks, they confirmed that at least 61 of the 87 complaints originated from the same operation. The Bitcoin wallet addresses, while different for each victim, shared structural similarities in their creation timestamps and transaction patterns. But the real breakthrough came from outside the FBI. A financial intelligence analyst at the U.S. Secret Service's Office of Investigations, a specialist named Ryan Akita who focused on cryptocurrency-facilitated fraud, had independently identified a pattern that the FBI's analysis had not yet reached. Ikeda had been tracking an unrelated wire fraud case when he noticed a cluster of Bitcoin wallets that exhibited identical behavioral signatures. Same mixer chain, same timing intervals between receipt and forwarding, same final destination pattern. He tagged 340 of these wallets and traced their outputs through the Monero conversion layer. All 340 wallets eventually fed into 3 master wallets, 3 collection points. Ikeda's analysis showed that these 3 wallets had received a combined total of $23 million over 14 months. He flagged it to his supervisor on January 7, 2026. The supervisor contacted the FBI Cyber Division the following day. Within 72 hours, Ikeda was embedded with Whitfield's team at FBI headquarters. The merger of the 2 investigations created a map that neither agency could have built alone. Ikeda's financial topology gave the FBI a view of the operation's economic infrastructure. The three master wallets had off-ramp connections to shell companies registered in Wyoming and New Mexico. One of those companies had a registered agent with a physical address in Austin, Texas. The address was a mail forwarding service, but the agent's identity, a man named Marcus Fong, was real. Fong had a record, minor cryptocurrency fraud charges in 2022 dismissed on a technicality, a compliance certification from a defunct exchange, and a current lease on a co-working space in Miami's Wynwood neighborhood. On January 19, 2026, the FBI obtained a federal search warrant for Fong's financial records. Simultaneously, they placed him under physical surveillance in Miami. For 3 weeks, agents watched Fong arrive at the co-working space every morning at 9:15 a.m., work on a laptop, and leave at 6 p.m. His daily routine was indistinguishable from any other freelancer in the building, but his network traffic was not. The FBI's court-ordered digital intercept captured encrypted communications between Fong's devices and 2 other locations, a commercial IP address in Austin, Texas, and a residential ISP connection in Sparks, Nevada. Austin, Sparks, Miami. 3 nodes. The geometry of Project Mirror began to take shape. On February 4, 2026, the investigation expanded. FBI agents in Austin identified the Austin IP address as belonging to a business suite in a strip mall at 4712 East Riverside Drive. The business was registered as Prism Pixel Productions. The registered officers were Kevin Dahl and Irene Molina. A background check returned the connection to the Palo Alto startup. Former AI researchers. Facial recognition expertise. The profile fit. The Secret Service simultaneously obtained warrants for the Nevada location, the IP address traced to a property outside Sparks, a converted barn on a 5-acre lot owned by a trust linked to Salazar's name. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next operation we cover on this channel. 3 warrants, 3 locations. But the investigation team made a decision that added weeks to the timeline. They chose surveillance over immediate raid. The goal was not just to arrest 7 individuals. The goal was to map every victim, document every transaction, and ensure the prosecution could prove the full scale of the conspiracy. For the next 5 weeks, the FBI and Secret Service conducted parallel surveillance operations across 3 states. In Austin, a rented apartment across the street from the strip mall served as a forward observation post. Agents logged the movements of 6 individuals who entered and exited the Prism Pixel production suite on a regular schedule. They identified Dahl, Molina, Callaway, Newsom, and Petrov through vehicle registration checks and photographic comparison with DMV records. The observation post was equipped with directional microphones and a court-authorized electromagnetic emissions collector that captured fragments of the Wi-Fi traffic inside the office. The fragments were partial and encrypted, but they confirmed the volume of data transfer consistent with large video file production and upload. In Nevada, the surveillance was more complex. The converted barn sat on open terrain with limited cover for observation. The FBI's Sacramento field office dispatched a mobile surveillance unit that operated from a livestock trailer parked on an adjacent property under a cover arrangement with the landowner. Agents photographed Salazar arriving at the property every 48 hours, typically staying for 4 to 6 hours to perform server maintenance. He drove a white Ford F-150 with Nevada plates. He always arrived alone. In Miami, the Secret Service maintained continuous coverage on Fong. His co-working space had a glass-walled conference room that he used for video calls. Agents in the building's shared lobby, posing as tenants, observed him conducting calls on encrypted platforms and working with multiple browser windows displaying cryptocurrency exchange interfaces. The surveillance teams were patient. They were also recording. On February 22, 2026, the Austin observation post captured its most significant intelligence. Through the directional microphone array, analysts recorded a 4-minute conversation between Dahl and Callaway in which they discussed the following week's target list. 11 names. 7 of them had not yet been contacted. The recording was fragmentary and partially obscured by ambient noise, but the forensic audio team at the FBI laboratory in Quantico enhanced it sufficiently to identify the names, the intended demand amounts, and a reference to the Nevada server as the storage location for the next batch of fabricated content. One name on that list stood out, a sitting state legislator in Michigan. The demand would have been $38,000. The fabricated clip was already in production. That recording accelerated the timeline. The FBI could not allow 7 more victims to be extorted while the investigation continued. On February 25, 2026, Whitfield convened a tactical planning session with representatives from the FBI Cyber Division, the Secret Service, and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Texas. The plan was simultaneous execution. All 3 locations. Same night. 0 warning. The coordination required was substantial. 3 federal judicial districts. 3 separate search warrant applications. 3 tactical teams. 1 communications backbone to synchronize execution across 2 time zones. The warrants were signed on March 1, 2026. Execution date, March 4, 2026. The Austin raid was designated the primary target. It contained the personnel and the production capability. The Nevada site was secondary, critical for evidence, but physically occupied only intermittently. Miami was tertiary. 1 target, 1 location, straightforward arrest. At 2:45 a.m. Central Time on March 4, 2026, the Austin team assembled at a staging point in a grocery store parking lot 3 blocks from the target. 12 FBI agents, including 4 from the Cyber Division's Evidence Recovery Team, a 4-agent Secret Service contingent, 2 Austin Police Department units providing outer perimeter security. Agent Whitfield commanded the Austin operation remotely from the FBI field office downtown, maintaining a joint communications link with the Nevada and Miami teams. At 3 a.m., the outer perimeter vehicles moved into position. 2 unmarked sedans blocked the strip mall's 2 vehicle exits. The nail salon and tax preparation service on either side were closed and unoccupied. At 3:12 a.m., the entry team advanced on foot from the parking lot. 2 agents carried a hydraulic ram, 2 carried suppressed sidearms. The remainder were armed with standard-issue service weapons and wore body cameras with live feed to the field office. At 3:17 a.m., a thermal imaging sweep confirmed the presence of at least 3 heat signatures inside the office suite. Later analysis would determine that Dahl, Calloway, and Newsom were inside at the time of entry, working a late production shift. At 3:18 a.m., the ram breached the front door. The agents entered in pairs. The suite was a single large room divided by cubicle partitions. 16 GPU towers were running. 7 monitors were active, 2 of them displaying the Mirage software interface with a face-swapping operation in progress. A fabricated video of a corporate attorney from Denver was approximately 60% rendered on one workstation. Dahl was seated at the primary workstation. He did not move. He did not speak. His hands were visible on the desk. Calloway was standing near a whiteboard mounted on the back wall. The whiteboard contained a handwritten table with victim names, payment amounts, and status codes: P for paid, NP for not paid, IP for in progress. Agents photographed the whiteboard before it was removed as evidence. Newsom was in a restroom at the rear of the suite. He was taken into custody without incident. All 3 were handcuffed, read their Miranda rights, and transported to the FBI's Austin field office for processing. Total time from breach to full control of the site, 94 seconds. In Sparks, Nevada, the timeline was offset by 1 hour due to the time zone difference. At 2:18 a.m. Pacific time, simultaneously with the Austin breach, a 6-agent FBI team from the Sacramento field office executed the search warrant on the converted barn. Salazar was not present, the barn was unoccupied, but the servers were running. The evidence recovery team found 47 terabytes of data across 12 rack-mount servers. The storage array contained the complete archive of fabricated deepfake content. 1,847 individual video files, each tagged with a victim identifier, a production date, and a distribution status code. It also contained the master target database. 8,000 names, addresses, social media profile links, compliance probability index scores, and contact status. Of those 8,000 names, only 1,423 had been contacted. The operation was less than 1/5 complete. The database also contained something the investigation team had not anticipated: a tier system. Not all victims were scored equally. Tier 1 targets, those with the highest income and highest public visibility, received higher demands and more sophisticated fabricated content. Tier 2 targets received standard quality deepfakes and moderate demands. Tier 3 targets, those with the lowest estimated ability to pay, were flagged for a future phase that had not yet launched: automated mass distribution using a lower quality deepfake and a lower demand of $3,500 per target. The planned Tier 3 rollout would have dramatically expanded the victim count. Internal planning documents on the servers projected 15,000 additional victims within 12 months if the 3rd tier had gone operational. In Miami, the Secret Service executed the arrest of Marcus Fong at 6:18 a.m. Eastern Time as he arrived at the Wynwood co-working space for his morning routine. The arrest was conducted by 4 agents in the building's parking garage. Fong was carrying a laptop, 2 smartphones, and a hardware cryptocurrency wallet containing access keys to 31 active wallets. The remaining 2 members of the operation, Molina and Petrov, were arrested later that day. Molina was taken into custody at her apartment in South Austin at 7:45 a.m. Central Time. Petrov was arrested at a coffee shop in the East 6th Street district at 11:30 a.m. Both arrests were conducted without resistance. Salazar was apprehended 2 days later on March 6, 2026, at a motel in Elko, Nevada, approximately 290 miles east of the Sparks server farm. He had checked in under his own name. His white F-150 was in the parking lot. He appeared unaware that the operation had been compromised. 7 arrests, 3 locations, 0 shots fired. The operational infrastructure of Project Mirror was physically dismantled in under 12 hours. The evidence processing took considerably longer. The 47 terabytes of data recovered from the Nevada server farm required a dedicated analysis team at the FBI's Regional Computer Forensics Laboratory in Menlo Park, California. The team consisted of 14 digital forensic examiners working in shifts. The first priority was victim notification. The FBI had an obligation to inform all identified victims, both those who had been contacted and extorted and those on the target list who had not yet been approached. The logistical scale of this effort was significant. 1,423 victims across 31 states, many of whom had paid quietly and told no one. Many of whom had believed the fabricated videos were real recordings. The notification letters were sent beginning March 18, 2026. Each letter included a statement that the video content used in the extortion was entirely fabricated, that the FBI had recovered and secured all copies, and that the recipient was under no legal suspicion. For 40% of the victims, those who had paid, the letter also contained information about the process for filing a financial loss claim. The response from victims was substantial. Many expressed relief. Some expressed anger that they had not been told sooner. Several reported lasting psychological damage from the period between receiving the extortion demand and the arrests. One victim, a high school principal in Ohio, had resigned from her position 3 weeks before the takedown, unable to cope with the threat of the video's distribution. Another, an Air Force major stationed in Colorado, had been under investigation by his own service's Office of Special Investigations after anonymously reporting the extortion. The military investigation was closed following the FBI's notification. The financial forensics painted a detailed picture of the operation's profitability. Total confirmed payments, $23.1 million. Fong's laundering chain had converted approximately $17.2 million of that into accessible funds distributed across prepaid cards, shell company accounts, and personal holdings. The remaining $5.9 million was still in transit through cryptocurrency mixing services at the time of the arrests and was frozen by court order. Of the $17.2 million that had been laundered, investigators recovered $11.4 million. The remaining $5.8 million had already been spent or transferred to accounts beyond the reach of U.S. seizure orders. Federal prosecutors noted in court filings that portions of the unrecovered funds appeared to have been converted to physical assets, real estate, vehicles, and luxury goods, some of which were still being traced. Dahl's personal expenditures during the operation's 14-month lifespan totaled approximately $1.6 million. A leased penthouse apartment in downtown Austin, a Tesla Model S Plaid, a $340,000 watch collection. Molina spent more conservatively, $420,000, mostly on technology equipment and a down payment on a condominium in West Austin that was never completed. The indictments were handed down on March 21, 2026, by a federal grand jury in the Western District of Texas. All 7 defendants were charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, extortion, money laundering, and identity theft. Dahl and Molina faced additional charges of theft of trade secrets related to the proprietary code taken from their former employer. The indictment detailed 1,423 individual counts of extortion, 1 for each identified victim. The potential sentences were staggering. Under federal sentencing guidelines, the conspiracy charge alone carried a maximum of 20 years. The cumulative wire fraud charges carried a theoretical maximum exceeding 300 years per defendant. In practice, federal sentencing would be determined by the total loss amount, the number of victims, and the role of each defendant in the conspiracy. Legal analysts estimated that Dahl and Molina, as the organizers and primary developers, faced effective sentences in the range of 20 to 30 years. Fong, as the financial architect, faced 15 to 25 years. The remaining 4 defendants, depending on cooperation agreements, faced 10 to 20 years each. As of April 2026, none of the 7 defendants have entered plea agreements. All 7 remain in federal custody without bail. Trial is expected to begin in the fall of 2026. What is the right sentence for someone who watched their clip? For someone who paid $16,500 to protect a life that was never actually threatened? Drop your answer in the comments. The case prompted immediate institutional responses. On March 12, 2026, the FBI Cyber Division issued an internal bulletin to all 56 field offices establishing a new reporting protocol for deepfake facilitated extortion. The bulletin classified AI-generated sexual extortion as a Tier 1 cyber threat. The same classification applied to ransomware attacks on critical infrastructure and state-sponsored network intrusions. The Secret Service expanded its cryptocurrency tracing team by 8 analysts, specifically to handle the growing volume of AI-facilitated financial crimes. The agency's director stated in a closed congressional briefing that deepfake extortion represented what he called the fastest-growing digital threat vector of 2026. On the legislative side, the case accelerated discussions around 2 pending federal bills. The first, the AI Content Authenticity Act, would require platforms hosting user-generated content to implement deepfake detection systems and provide rapid removal mechanisms for fabricated intimate imagery. The second, the Digital Extortion Prevention Act, would create a standalone federal crime for AI-generated extortion, carrying minimum mandatory sentences. Neither bill had passed as of April 2026. Both were in committee. The technology at the center of the case remains fully functional. The Mirage software was seized and is in FBI custody, but the underlying techniques, generative adversarial networks, face-swapping algorithms, neural rendering, are not proprietary to Project Mirror. They exist in open-source repositories. They improve every month. The 3-photo threshold that Project Mirror used is not a fixed limitation. Newer open-source models are approaching 2-photo capability. Some researchers have demonstrated single-image face transfer with reduced but still convincing quality. The extortion model Project Mirror employed was not novel in concept. Sextortion, extortion using intimate imagery, has existed for decades. What was novel was the elimination of the need for actual imagery. Every previous sextortion scheme required either a real compromising photograph or a hacked device to obtain one. Project Mirror required nothing from the victim, only their public face. That shift changes the risk calculation for every person with a photograph on the internet, which in practical terms means every person. The target database recovered from the Nevada server farm is sealed under federal court order. The 6,577 names on that list who were never contacted, who never received the 45-second clip and the 72-hour deadline, will never know they were on it. They will never know how close they came, but the methodology that put them on the list is documented in court filings available to anyone who requests them. The compliance probability index, the tier system, the psychological architecture of the 72-hour deadline. Project Mirror is dismantled. Its 7 operators are in custody. Its $23 million revenue stream is severed. The 3-photo threshold still exists, the technology still improves, and there are approximately 4.9 billion people with publicly accessible photographs online. The operation was 18% complete. The capability to start over requires a laptop, an internet connection, and access to the same open source tools that every computer science graduate student in the world can download tonight.